Welcome to my channel. Today we have a kind of a stash builder video. Napkins are great for focal images, for instant backgrounds. You can even take ephemera from them or create collage papers. And I've done all of them. But there's something else that napkins can give us. They can give us the color schemes. Artists have created these napkins. They're trained in color theory. So before you use them up in your art, look at them carefully. Is there a color scheme you like or one you want to try? So in today's video, I'm going to take 7 napkins and I'm going to borrow or harvest the color schemes. All the napkins you see come from NinnysNapkins.com. There's a link in the description box below. Here's a quick preview of the 7 napkins. Then we're going to get started. So I cut some tags. They're a little larger than the regular size 8 shipping tags. And I've given it a coat of gesso. That's so the paint goes on. You could do both sides if you wish, but I'm choosing to only do one. You could do this on an art journal page or whatever you want. So this napkin is called a net, and it's got these purples and warm colors. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to match it as closely as possible to paints that I have. So the purple, the many shades of purple, I'm thinking is very close to my deep violet. The orange color, that's burnt sienna. Now when you start out, this might be take you a little bit longer, and as your color sense grows, you will find this process easier. That was Naples yellow, and this green here is Hooker's green. Now the blue berries here, I think are very close to navy or Prussian blue, and there's some brown in here. I might be right about these colors, I might find out I'm wrong, but I'm going to learn in the process. Now, I'm making the color scheme to use on other pages, not necessarily with the napkin. So if they're not exactly correct, as long as it's a color scheme you like, it's a win. So I have these color splotches stencil, and I'm going to use that. You could use a stencil of a flower if you like, or you could just swatch it out in a circle. So this is deep violet, and I'm just putting the color in. Now sometimes, if the color is exactly right, you might just put it on just the one color. And you might have to build up the color to get the depth. Now, if you don't have a stencil that you like, you can simply mix the color with your finger and make a circle like this. It doesn't have to be so fancy. The goal is to learn about colors and to end up with reference cards of color schemes that you can flip through and get inspiration when you want to create. Here I'm just building up the color. Now I do speed up the video in the next napkins, but I did want to allow you time to get the process. So this is Naples yellow. And you'll find that Naples yellow is a great color on its own, and it shows up on a lot of napkins. Now, if you don't have Naples yellow, you might mix whatever yellow you have with an ivory to mute it to get that soft color that is Naples yellow. And this is burnt sienna. Now these three colors that I have here, the deep violet, the Naples yellow, and the burnt sienna, are the three main colors of this color scheme. It's an unlikely pair, which is why I chose it. This isn't a color scheme that I would naturally gravitate towards. So I could leave it here. But I've decided that I'm going to take some of the secondary colors, like the pop of blue and the little bit of green and the little bit of brown, and put it in. And because they're secondary colors, I'm using a smaller swatch of them. So when I take this reference card out, I may choose to only use the three basic colors. But then I have options for other things that go with it as well. Now here we have Hooker's green, but it is mixed with the Naples yellow. So that's what I'm going to do because I like how that combines. I like how the artist of that napkin has done that. And as we go through other napkins, you're going to see how I solve some of the problems and how I represent them on my swatches. Hopefully to give you some ideas. So here I'm mixing the Hooker's green and the Naples yellow. Hopefully, as you go through this process and you are mixing your paints, you're going to discover how your paints can be mixed, and that will expand your overall color. So I'm happy with how this came out. I think it's a good representation of the color scheme that really drew me to that napkin. I forgot the Prussian blue, which is the berries. I really like that blue, that pop of blue in there. Now, here's the secondary part. You need to label this. Now, if you have a variety of different types of paints, you may want to come up with a code that labels them. So if it was Liquitex Basics, you might put LB beside it, or Deco Art. I primarily just have my Liquitex Basics. A couple of them are Artist Loft. They're typically what I always have. So I'm not going to label them. But a Prussian blue from one brand might look very different to another one, and they will mix differently. So now I'm simply labeling it. And that is color scheme number 1. So this napkin is called Eliza, and it has this gray with this purple, which is totally not what I typically do. So that's why I chose it. So I grabbed my gray, then my deep violet. Now the centers of the flowers, it's hard to tell in the camera, but they're kind of a blue purple. So I'm grabbing Prussian blue and dioxazine purple. I think I'm going to blend them. Now the leaf here is kind of a blue tinge to it, to the gray. So I'm going to do some mixing there. And we have at the center of the flowers, well, you guessed it, that's Naples yellow. And I like how that shows up. So as I said, this is a color scheme that I don't know that I've ever done, but I was attracted to it, so I'm anxious to give it a try, so that's why I'm putting it on the swatch. So here, when I'm doing the gray, because there's a multi shades and tones of gray, I'm making some darker and some lighter. I'm mixing it with a little bit of white gesso. Remember, you can always add white, black, or gray to any color to get a different shade or tone. So if you're struggling to find the perfect color, try adding white, black, or gray. Here's my deep violet again. I love how that deep violet and the gray work with each other. And here I'm mixing the dioxazine purple with the Prussian blue. Now, if you're saying, well, I can't do that, I don't know enough. Now, to be honest, off camera, if I'm unsure that the color is going to be right, I'm mixing it and I'm testing it on scrap paper before I'm swatching it on this card in a video. Sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm not right. The Naples yellow on this napkin is more muted, so I'm mixing white in it. And when I write my label on that, that's what I'm going to indicate, that it's Naples yellow mixed with white. Remember, I plan on using up these napkins on art journal pages or mixed media projects, so I'm not going to have them to refer to. Alternatively, I could have cut a swatch of that napkin out and glued it onto the other side. So here I'm testing out. I want that blue-gray. So I grabbed, it was phthalo green, and I'm mixing it with gray to see if I can get the color that is on some of those leaves. And you can see, here's my trial page. I grab a piece of scrap paper and I'm testing it. And that is fairly close to the color. So again, I have the primary colors of the color scheme and some of the secondary ones. And when I'm labeling them, I'm labeling if there's 2 colors that I mix together or 3, I put them in. Moving right along to napkin number 3. This is called Winter Dream, and I love the watercolor effect here. And again, we've got gray. So I'm grabbing out the gray, but I'm adding some silver because silver is basically gray. This one is alizarin crimson. Reds are hard to match, so don't worry if you struggle. I've got Naples yellow there. As I was saying, the reds are often difficult. There's blue reds and orange reds, and I often find when I'm trying to match a red to a napkin or to something in particular, I'm often having to mix colors together. But this one's pretty close to alizarin crimson. I'm quite happy with that. And alizarin crimson is kind of a bluish, it has a blue tinge. And here I'm mixing Naples yellow with the alizarin crimson. And that's giving that coral peach tone. If I add more Naples, it's going to take on a different tone. If I add more white, and I know that I can do that when I'm mixing the paint. I can get shades of that peach tone. But I'm happy enough with this, and I'm liking the red with the peachy coral tone in of themselves. Here I'm just doing a swatch where I'm adding more Naples yellow to the alizarin crimson, just to show that there are variations. And as a reminder, when I grab this reference tool, I can really play with those two colors and the amounts of each to get a lot of different tones. So here's the gray. Now another part of this napkin is a lot of white space. Now, how will I use these reference tools? Well, I will have them at the ready. So if I go to the studio and I'm not sure what color scheme, or I'm looking to try something different, I might flip through them and find inspiration. That's bright yellow. And then I'm just putting silver down to remind myself that silver, I can use silver as a gray, especially if I want to add some bling to it. And now here I'm mixing Prussian blue with some gray and white. And that's giving that blue-gray shading that was in that other napkin. I chose to mix a different color. So there are many ways to get the same color. In the other one I use phthalo green and gray, and this one I use Prussian blue. So back to how I would use this. I would take it out. I could use these colors in a masterboard with collage papers. This is going to jumpstart my creative process. So I'm just labeling them with enough information to allow me to understand. If this is too crowded for you, you can do it on a 7x10 art journal page. That is your art process. This napkin is called Hella Gray, like hellebores, and I love the bright colors here. So I'm thinking this is quinacridone magenta, shades of that, dioxazine purple with the magenta. It's kind of mixed together, I'm thinking, to get kind of a violet-y color. And then there's the two greens, bright green or yellow green and hooker's green. Or that's my guess. Now the white flower here is kind of an ivory color. Now I have unbleached titanium, but it is not quite right. So I'm going to mix that with white. And I get a pretty close to what I see in the napkin. So by doing the swatching out now, I'm doing the color blending and the mixing and doing some of the thinking work. So now that it's on the reference tool, if I want that color scheme, either to use with the napkin, because that's a possibility, or not, I don't have to start from scratch. I've kind of moved myself forward. So this one, I'm mixing the quinacridone magenta and the dioxazine purple. And that together gives me a bit of a violet-y color. Now, I'll be honest, if you're wondering why I didn't just use deep violet, it wasn't exactly right. I tried it. And there's lots of shades in here. And so again, depending on how much magenta you use, how much dioxazine you use, it's going to vary. And this one is quinacridone magenta straight up. Now on this napkin, there's lots of shades of the magenta and of the purple. So you can go several layers of paint, which is going to give you a more opaque coverage. or you can mix them at varying degrees. So this is the hooker's green that was there, and then I have yellow green. You can take these color schemes, and I show close-ups of the napkin and the color scheme at the end of the video, and you can copy this color scheme. You don't have to have the napkin in order to do it. You can just take the color scheme, add it to your repertoire. I've given you all the colors that I've used, mostly Liquitex Basics colors. This napkin is called Cranes, and I love the gray, the reds, the corals, the blacks of it. It's very simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated color scheme. It's just sometimes we don't even think of the simple ones. Now here I'm using cadmium red. And I'm mixing in a little bit of burnt umber. And here I'm taking what I had there, the cadmium red, the Naples yellow, and the burnt umber, and making the coral color. There was a brown overtone. So this I did off camera on the scrap paper, mix until I got the right color. So adding brown, the brown burnt umber to this was key. So you're going to have to look really hard at the napkin and just try things. That's part of this process, experimenting with color. You will learn so much, and that you'll be able to apply to your pages by taking the time to build your stash repertoire, to learn about how colors work together. Every color has different pigments in it. Different brands sometimes have different pigments for the same colors. So that's black, we've added gray, burnt umber, and then I do again that gray Prussian blue. See, I did that early on. It's been on several of the napkins. So now I've learned if I want that blue shading color, gray and Prussian blue is the answer. And I've learned that. This is not a color that I have out of a tube. And I don't need it out of the tube, but now I know how to get it. I don't think I've ever mixed brown with the reds, but I like how that worked, and it gave a very different tone. So again, it's something that I can use moving forward. Now I'm doing all 7 of these color swatches, color schemes in one sitting. You could do them one at a time as you find a color scheme that you like. This napkin is called Aquarell Poppy, and I love the warm colors. So this poppy is cadmium red and cadmium yellow. This one I'm thinking bright yellow, cadmium yellow, and yellow oxide, and this one is orange, deep violet, which makes that red color, and quinacridone magenta. Now, because they are really blended in this watercolor color napkin, I am going to do this swatching out a little bit different. I'm going to have the colors separately. There's the cad red on the one side, cad yellow on the other, and then I'm going to blend them in the middle because I want all 3 of that to show up. I want all those variations to be caught as part of this color scheme. So I have cad red on the one, and I'm showing the color that it mixes in the middle. So same thing with this one. I'm putting quinacridone magenta on the one side. And deep violet on the other. So there's the deep violet. And as you see, sometimes you have to layer it up to get the color you want. And here's the quinacridone magenta. So this one I'm going to mix 3 shades of yellow. I've got bright yellow, cad yellow, and yellow oxide. This is definitely a fall-inspired color scheme. And there's the yellow oxide. I love, and I think you bring a lot of depth to your pages and interest to your pages when you blend colors, when you use 2 shades of a similar color. And this one I'm mixing orange with the deep violet. And I've learned in the past by accident that when you combine the orange with the deep violet, you get this lovely rosy color. And ever since discovering that, I've used that a lot in my art. And so there is a very bright and bold color scheme. This one is called Flower and Dragonfly, and it is the last napkin. I love the type of blue in there, and that is not a blue that I often use, which is why I chose it. So I'm having quinacridone magenta, dioxazine purple, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, my hooker's green, and yellow green. So again, we're going to have 3 colors that are the basic colors that you see in the napkin, which could be the color scheme in of themselves, but then I've got some secondary colors. So this is quinacridone magenta. And here I'm mixing dioxazine purple, quinacridone magenta, and some Prussian blue to get the color that most closely resembles the napkin. Now, again, if I'm using it with the napkin, I want to get it as close. But if I'm not using it with the napkin, I can have some variations. That's just dioxazine purple straight up, and you can see the difference. And this is the cobalt blue. I had a tube of cobalt blue for 6 years. I finally used it up, and this is a fresh tube. And I want to start using different blues, which again was why I chose this color scheme. Here I'm mixing cobalt blue with Prussian blue. I want that color for my wall. And then I'm putting the greens in. Albeit, the greens are very, very secondary in this color scheme. But even if you were painting flowers on your own, learning which greens and yellows work together, learning from these artists is key. So I'm going to just simply label this, and then I'm going to show pictures of the napkins with the color schemes that I was able to take from them. So go to your napkin stash, go to your closet. If there's colors that you like, swatch them out, give yourself some reference tools, and expand your color scheme repertoire. I hope you found this video useful. Give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Instagram. And until next time, go get creative.